Welcome to the League of Women Voters Chicago Zooming with the Alderman series of interviews. My name's Barbara Gehring. I'm a member of the League. The League was founded 101 years ago right here in Chicago. It is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The Chicago League is one of hundreds of leagues all across the country. These interviews with the aldermen are part of our efforts to educate people about those who represent us in setting the policies and ordinances that govern us here in Chicago. And today, we are very pleased to have as our guest, Alderman Pat Dowell of the 3rd Ward. Welcome, Alderman Dowell, and we so appreciate your taking the time to be with us.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here and look forward to this opportunity.
Now, you should know that this Zoom session is being recorded. It'll be available for viewing after today on the League website. And Alderman Dowell will be sending you and everyone who registered for this program, who is not a member, a link to the video when it becomes available. Also, everyone should know that we have provided the aldermen with a copy of the questions I'll be asking ahead of time. Now, before starting the questions, we want to show you a map of all 50 wards of Chicago, and our Zoom host is going to pull that up for us. The cursor is going to show you the location of the 3rd ward. So there are all 50 wards, and there's the location of the 3rd ward. And now we're going to show you a map of just Ward 3. There you go. And let's get started. So, Alderman, we've seen a map of your ward, but can you, in your words, describe where it is and the main boundaries of the ward?
Yes, thank you. My ward, which if you look at it, looks like a guitar. That's what I call it. My
like
little
that.
guitar, which is located just south of the downtown area. I start basically at Roosevelt Road, the south side of Roosevelt Road, and extends all the way down to around 57th Street. And it takes in major corridors like State Street, Michigan Avenue, Clark Street, portions of King Drive, portions of Princeton, as my north and south street locations. It is a ward that I would say is like a very diverse ward. I have people of great means that live in the ward and people of meager means who live in the ward. So it's a ward that requires a person to be able to go from what I call White House to White Castles, you know, someone who can work with all kinds of people who live within the ward. The ward also has some very important institutions. Provident Hospital is a major institution serving the 3rd ward, along with institutions like IIT, Columbia College, all have major facilities within the 3rd ward. The University of Chicago has some of their programming within the 3rd ward, especially along 55th Street with the Washington Parks Art Incubator, the Green Line Theater. We've got great boulevards that run through the ward, King Drive and Garfield Boulevard, historic green spaces that ring the ward on both the north-south leg and also the east-west leg. So I'm very proud of the diversity in the ward. We have the diversity in housing stock, from high-rise towers like the NEMA to public housing transformation locations like Robert Taylor, and Stateway Gardens, now called Park Boulevard and Legend South. We also have 100% public housing in places like Wentworth Garden and Dearborn Homes. We also have a lot of affordable, what I would call project-based Section 8 subsidized housing, and a great deal of market rate single-family homes that are beginning to pop up in places in Bronzeville, Douglas, and the South Loop.
So you've already addressed some of this very broadly, but could you just give us a summary of some of the neighborhoods that are in your ward, just by neighborhood name? That helps people understand.
That's helpful. The South Loop, starting from the north end of my ward, the South Loop is one community that I cover. Moving into Bronzeville, which involves Grand Boulevard, portions of Douglas, Washington Park, and Fuller Park are the neighborhoods that make up the third ward.
And you've already mentioned some of these great institutions that are in your ward, either fully or partially. In terms of land use, and you've mentioned a lot of the residential types that you have, but in terms of land use, what would you say, in residential, commercial, industrial, what's the approximate makeup of your ward?
I have very, very little industrial land or land that's zoned manufacturing, very little. Most of the third ward is residential with commercial corridors, historic commercial corridors, 47th Street, 43rd Street, 51st Street, Michigan Avenue, parts of Wabash Avenue. And I would say heavy on residential, probably about 75% residential, with the remainder being commercial. We do have a lot of open space in terms of park usage. We've got like several parks in the South Loop, several parks in the Bronzeville community. I have one major park facility, which is the Fuller Park, a historic park. And then some smaller ones, Idea Pendleton Park, Armstrong Park, Cottontail Park, just to name a few.
And what would you say are a few of the key issues that are facing the people of your ward right now?
Ooh, right now, Barbara, the main issue, and I think this is an issue across the entire city of Chicago, and I'm sure I'm not the only alderman that has brought this up or will bring this up. It's got to be violence. The level of violence in the city of Chicago is astounding and tragic at the same time. And I would say that's the main concern that the people in my community have. In the South Loop, it would be concerns related to carjackings and theft of like mail packages that come to people's doors. In the Bronzeville community, I would say it's carjackings and gun violence. Same in Washington Park, more gun violence concerns. So that would be the main issue in our community at this time, followed closely by the need for good schools. People want to have who's, live in the communities, whether you have money or you don't, you want your children to go to a great school. And so, while we have some good schools in our community, we need more improved schools. I've been able to bring in a classical school, Bronzeville Classical School, which is attracting residents who live in Bronzeville and across the city to a great classical school, which we didn't have south of Roosevelt Road, going, like to 55th Street, for example. So this is an opportunity. And the South Loop Elementary School continues to be a very good school, along with Beasley, which is a magnet school. Some of our schools are improving. Phillips High School, for example, which used to be the second worst school in the state of Illinois, has improved dramatically, where now it is more of a neighborhood high school, go-to school. And Hendricks Elementary, which is now a level 1 school, which we're really pleased to see happen. So I'd say that would be a second concern, great access to great schools. I think the third concern is we just need more retail in our community. People are tired of driving out to, Orland or over to Clybourne to do their shopping. We've been successful in reducing the food desert in our community by bringing in 2 Marianos, but we need access to more retail opportunities like you find in other communities that are not marginalized. So that's a challenge.
And I know that you are on some city council committees. Would you like to tell us which ones you serve on, and particularly those of which you are a chair or a vice chair?
Well, I serve on many committees. Sometimes I think I have too many committees, but the work of the city is important. I serve on the aviation committee. I'm also on the housing committee. I'm on the finance committee, the zoning committee, the environmental and health committee, the contract and oversight committee. There's probably a couple of more, but I chair the City Council Budget and Government Operations Committee, and I've been the chair of that committee since the election of Mayor Lightfoot. And prior to that, under Mayor Rahm Emanuel, or former Mayor Rahm Emanuel, I was the chair of the Human Relations Committee. So I have a broad perspective of everything going on within city government. And I'm pleased to participate at whatever way I can to contribute to the life of the city. I am also a member of the Rules Committee, which is chaired by Alderman Harris. So that's a committee of the whole. So I do participate on that committee as well.
That is a busy schedule. That's a lot of committees.
Tell me about it, Barbara.
When did you first join the city council?
I was elected in 2007 after a very contentious runoff with the former alderman of the ward. I tried in 2003 to become alderman, but lost that election, winning about 35% of the vote, which was enough to encourage me to run again in 2007.
And you ran again, obviously, in 2019. So tell us why you decided to keep working as alderman, keep running and asking to be alderman again.
I've been blessed to represent a great ward. And when I'm first elected in 2007, I had a lot of ideas about things that I wanted to do. Unfortunately, the Great Recession of 2008 hit. It stalled a lot of the work that I had planned to bring in, for example, a parade of homes to build market rate housing in the community, to try to bring in grocery stores and retailers that would be helpful to our community. I wasn't able to really begin that work until around 2011. And since that time, I've been, just on a tear to bring in new businesses, to invigorate places like Motor Row, State Street, Bronzeville. And so until 2019, when I looked at my body of work, which I thought was a good body of work, I wanted it to be excellent. And in order to be excellent, I needed to run again in 2019. So that's what prompted me to run in 2019.
Do you have any other employment outside of being a member of the city council?
Oh, where would I find the time to do that?
Well, yes.
No, I'm a full-time alderman. Um, I don't see how anyone can really do this job well and have other employment. It's almost impossible, I think, because you have to be available to your constituents, and that could be anywhere. I was in, where was I? In Mariano's, and people stop me. They want to talk about things going on in their community, or something good, something bad. You always have to be available, and you never know when that will happen. It could happen in the middle of the night with a phone call. It can happen as you walk from your house to your car, and a neighbor's walking down the street and wants to stop and talk to you. It's very hard to have a second job, and so therefore I'm a full-time alderman.
Let's go back to your number one issue, violence. I was wondering what are a few of the actions by the city that have been taken to reduce gun violence that you think have been effective or will be effective?
I think one thing that has been effective, but it needs more support, and the city needs to support additional organizations to do this kind of work, has been the street outreach, the actual hiring of people who are from the community, who have an understanding of what's driving the gun violence, what's driving the violence, and can intervene in that system that we see. So in my own community, I work with a group called Aquavis, which does a lot of this work. It also has a hospital response program. So if anyone is shot or there's some kind of violence, they respond at the hospital to try to prevent the retaliation that may go on after the shooting. So I think the city should invest more in groups like that and others who have a genuine connection to the communities in which they work, so that they can work with the young people and the adults that are involved in the cycle of violence and interrupted in some way. I think the other thing that the city has been good at, and I see it an improvement year after year during our budget season, has been in the investment of employment for young people, so that it's not just about summer jobs, but it's about jobs that youth can access all year long. And I've seen market improvement in the amount of funding that has gone towards this. But this is a complicated issue, Barbara, how to get rid of the gun violence we see. Certainly having a federal task force in Chicago has been helpful or can be helpful. We need a more unified federal response across the country. Cities can do their part, but this really has to be led, I think, by the federal government.
If you would, are there any changes that you would like to see made in the operation of the council? Just going back to the committees and your work on the council.
Now, I haven't really given that a great deal of thought because I think the council in its present form works. I would like to see more community involvement or public or transparency in some of the work that we that we do. In order to follow the work of the city council, you literally have to spend time, combing through documents, visiting websites, coming to meetings. It's a bit much for the average person. And I would like to see us, maybe put out a newsletter about important things happening in the city council, not just from the perspective of the administration, but from the perspective of the city council. I know that we're supposed to be modernizing our the way the city council works. Some of that has happened in terms of submitting our documents online and through an electronic system. We're supposed to be moving to voting electronically. I think that would be helpful so that people could see how your alderman is voting on a certain piece of legislation. I don't know when those things are going to really happen. There's been a lot of talk about it, but those are some of the things I think could be helpful in modernizing our city council.
Okay, interesting ideas. Why don't we turn to ward maps? The city council has not embraced having an independent commission draw the ward maps. We understand that council members are going to be drawing the maps. And as part of this series of interviews with aldermen, the league has seen, just looking at the maps and hearing the descriptions, that many neighborhoods are divided between 2 to as many as 5 different wards. Do you think that the council members should strive to keep neighborhoods in a single ward or 2 wards? Where do you stand on that?
Well, I certainly believe that council members are thoughtful about communities of interest. That's what I call them. When I think of my own ward in terms of Bronzeville or the South Loop or Washington Park or Fuller Park, I mean, I represent most of Fuller Park or all of Fuller Park at this point. Bronzeville is separated or not separated, but represented by 2 aldermen, and that's Alderman King and I, and we work very closely together to make sure that the ward boundaries are really irrelevant. And in places like the South Loop, I would say it's the same, we have the same focus. There are communities, however, and I will raise up Inglewood, for example, where I have a very small piece of Inglewood now that could benefit from having less aldermen represent them. I believe right now there's 6. That's way too many. And I'm sure that through this remapping process that, aldermen will be thoughtful about that. And I'm sure you'll see communities of more communities of interest than you saw in the last remap process.
Thanks. Let's just go back to, you said that you were elected initially in a runoff. So we are going to talk a little bit about ranked choice voting. When one candidate for mayor or alderman doesn't receive 50% of +1 vote in the February election right now, the top 2 vote getters on the ballot have a runoff election in April. Without going into the minutiae of ranked choice voting, what is your view about using something like ranked choice voting to determine the winner in lieu of the runoff? We can go through an explanation of how it would work, or we can just say ranked choice would prevent a runoff.
I don't see what's wrong with the runoff, Barbara. What's wrong with the runoff?
Some aldermen have said it's a great expense. That was some of the ejection, comments.
I think a runoff really makes very clear to the voters who what their choices are, and that gives them the opportunity to express their will, to express their desire. I don't see anything wrong with the runoff. I have not been convinced that ranked choice voting is the best option between the two. Um, you know, time is money. And I do know that with ranked choice voting, it has taken a long time sometimes to land on who that winner,
Mhm.
quote unquote, winner is. So at this point, I will say that I'll keep an open mind. I haven't landed in one particular box or the other. Um, I'm probably leaning towards keeping the system the way it is because no one has shown me that the other system is better.
Thank you. Now, if the league wanted to support one of your initiatives, um, logistically, what steps would you recommend the league take, or would you like the league to take vis-a-vis you? For example, should we be asking members to call or write alder people, or send written comments to the appropriate committee members or to all members of the city council? What do you think is the most effective way to proceed if there is something that the league wants to support?
Well, I think the first thing is a conversation, to pick up the phone and give me a call to express what your interest is.
Mhm.
I would not make a decision about how to involve the league without having some conversation with my constituents or a constituent group. Um, so that's always important to me. So I think the first thing is just a phone call to have a conversation about the issue, what it is that the league might, um, how the league might want to participate, and then to work that out with the constituents to see if that's something that they would support.
And we've come to the last question. This has been wonderful. What are several things you would like to get done or at least started during the remainder of your term? Your term ends in 2023.
Oh, I've got a long list, but I think the first thing on my list is bringing in the Pete's Produce, at least getting that constructed or construction to begin. It's not a Pete's Produce, it's called Pete's Fresh Market,
Mhm.
which committed to this community back in 2019. But because of the pandemic and just the bureaucracy, we have not been able to get that store in the ground. We've completed financing of the store now. And so I want to get that done. That's like the number one thing on my list. I would say, secondly, I have some ideas about upgrading some of our parks, Metcalf Park, Mary Richardson Park, um, and others. And so working with the park district, I'd like to get those things in place by 2023. Um, we have some major redevelopment going on along 43rd Street at the Green Line, transit-oriented development projects that are beginning to get in the ground. The phase one is about to start, hopefully in the next month. But there are other phases, and I would like to see those other phases at least get through the approval process so that we can be assured that 43rd Street will be redeveloped. We have similar opportunities on 51st Street. So that would be a focus of mine for 2023, along with just strengthening and getting some of the hiccups out of Motor Row. We have seen a lot of investment there, but we still have some challenges. And so we want to make sure that Motor Row continues to be not only a good street for the residents, but a street that will be supportive of tourism and the conventioneers that come to McCormick Place, and all those, and also those tourists that come to Chinatown. I view Motor Row as the bridge between Chinatown and McCormick Place, and I want to make sure we strengthen that connection. And then lastly, you know, I care a lot about culture, and I'm working to bring deeply rooted dance theater into the third ward. So anyone listening, hands off. I'm working with deeply rooted to bring them to a location in the third ward. Um, so those are my priorities.
Yeah, exciting plans, I think. Alderman, this has been great. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Barbara.
It's a reminder to everyone that a link to this program will be found on the Chicago League's website. Everyone who registered for today's program who's not a league member will get an email with the link, along with an invitation, of course, to join the league, as well as sign up for notices of future programs. And in 2 weeks, Thursday, December 2 at 6 p.m., we hope you'll register to join us for our Zooming with the Alderman program featuring Alderman Walter Burnett of the 27th Ward. Again, this has been just a wonderful conversation. We so appreciate everything, and you're making the time to share all of this with everyone who's going to view this Zoom interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.